Welcome to the lore section for this week, and what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the lore maker's guide to regeneration. So that one idea that keeps haunting us is getting closer and closer. Death of a spaceman. So with that being ushered in 315, we know last year in October, Richard Tyrer and Chris Roberts, they actually had a call on all devs back when it was the pre-recorded show for what now inside Star Citizen Live. Now we're getting Healing Tier 0, and the lure makers of Star Citizen have decided to try to tackle this idea. So it's a very complex idea. What they have released is, the structure of what it will be. So there's going to be a lot of evolution to this. So as far as the terminology, we have, the imprint, regeneration, the Ibrahim Sphere, traumatic response echo, imprint visibility score, regen, cycle, gap, biotech, corp, regen, serum, wipe, dead, kill, murder, etc. So what we're going to do is just touch base on each one of these ideas as a vocabulary, and then follow this lure maker's guide down to touch base on it, give our thoughts, and create the momentum for the lure developing on this. So imprinting is essentially the term for the bioscan being regenerated. You're using the record of your DNA to make you as an individual. And the issue here is that if you are missing a leg, when they clone you, which is not cloning, you're going to be still missing your leg. And that's an issue for me, because I think we need to add in this lure something called stop limit, to where you can record your DNA at a particular time prior to certain injury. Just like if the crypto market is dropping or your stocks are dropping, you can set that stop limit, and you can still exit at a particular time when you had made a profit. So let's add that in CIG stop limit.
And the important thing to mention is also they were trying to get away from it just being a DNA scan, because we have that technology. You can store an entire person's DNA on like a CD. It's not like a sci-fi technology. It was that they're recording you almost like a state machine. So it's got like a record of what every cell in your body is almost like doing at that point. So that when they make you have your skills, you have your reflexes, which don't exist in your DNA. You have your scars and all your experiences that are both the nurture side of you as well as the nature of like your DNA. And that's, I think, a really critical point that they've tried to write in.
It's your metadata.
The memories, metadata is a good point to be made. Memories, thoughts, and personalities will transition with this imprint, and then it can be transferred from spheres without loss. Only one copy of an imprint can exist at the same time, so there's no multiple use. Updating an imprint will override all previous imprints. Then we have the regeneration idea. Anybody want to run with that?
Sure. This is the act of respawning. Regeneration is using that imprint that Delta just spoke about, and bioprinting it, I think it's the word, into a new body, which suddenly doesn't become so new anymore, because it could be missing a leg and could be scarred and could be have a whole bunch of baggage all suddenly downloaded into it. It's a near identical body of the original, barring any effect of these echoes. And I find echoes to be, I actually find them to be the most interesting part of all this is the echoes. quite clever bit of lore, I think, that they came up with to explain all of this away. So don't forget, guys, the context of all this is the lore team filling in the gaps for this new medical gameplay that, kind of is a permadeath light type medical respawn system, and this is the lore team's way of explaining that, using technologies and stories and stuff to help us kind of be immersed in this world. Which, again, I said it before, it's amazing that CIG is even tackling this. Most developers would just be happy with, you die, you respawn somewhere, you lose some of your stuff. So I think when people want to complain about this system, just think of it as like,
it's more than you get in every other game.
Yeah, so. But Jale also said something really super good. If it's done poorly, it's better to not say anything as well. Yeah, I agree with that.
I think you can get in situations where giving an explanation that's bad or that takes people out of it can be more deleterious than just not saying anything, letting people's imaginations do with it. And I do think that anybody can say their own opinion of whether or not they like this and whether or not they prefer the old system. I kind of prefer the old lore of the original Death of a Spaceman, bearing in mind this is the same gameplay, and I've always been on board with the gameplay. But given what we have, I'm perfectly fine with it. I'm perfectly happy with it. I think that it's space magic, but it's not asking me to forget what a body is in order to go along with it. So it's not taking me out of the action. It's just saying this is part of our fantastical world that we live in. Great. That's fine by me.
Yeah.
I'm a nerd. Yeah.
Yeah, so then we have the Ibrahim Sphere, which makes all this possible. We'll get into exactly why it's called the Ibrahim Sphere, but point to be made is that the components of it actually is an alien technology. So it's not like he created the original tech to make all of this possible. So your spheres, the corporate situation is actually engendered into this environment tiers. So you'll have higher quality Ibrahim spheres that can do a better job than low quality. So when Ace respawns at Grimhex, his clone won't be as good as, or his imprint. I have to get out of saying clone because they want to move away from that. His imprint won't be a quality or level than mine would be at Orson or New Babbage.
Yeah.
Now, as far as the mechanics of that, is that going to be played into it? I don't know. We're just dealing with the lore here.
There is a lot of the bits where they've kind of said we're not going to fill in that gap of lore until we know exactly what the gameplay designers want to do as well. Mm-hmm. So there are going to be one of the big holes that people keep mentioning, which is a really valid point, is what's the lore behind if my ship blows up that has the Ibrahim Sphere on it? And they're saying that we'll transfer because that's the gameplay decision. They haven't really written the lore around that. They started talking about backups, but that kind of contradicts what they wrote. So they'll adapt to whatever the gameplay designers want. Another good example is, people want it to be some people want it to be the way that you die. Like if you get blown up, then it's going to harm you more than if you get shot. And some people want to see that happen. Some people might want it so that no matter how you die, it just costs you one life and everyone gets the same number of lives. The designers will decide that, and then the lore writers will write the lore to fit it. That's just the way that's going to work.
Yeah. That they did struggle with that, didn't they? If the ship blows up, what happens to the sphere? Because my sphere's on the ship, and they were like, yeah, backups.
I like the idea that actually the spheres are maybe, because they can talk to you, maybe they're talking to each other, and that actually they're all sort of more of an access point, and you're choosing your access point, but if that's destroyed, then it's just going to sort of be accessed from somewhere else. Mm-hmm. So there might still be one, and it might still be one point of access, but there's that facility to revert.
It almost alludes to the fact that, yes, we're not immortal, but your spheres damn are. Like, if it blows up here, it disappears there, it's going to appear there. If it blows up there, it's going to appear over there, or, it's weird. Anyway.
I mean,
It's a
The
hard
key
topic.
aspect we can't really forget is that the technology itself is also new in the Star Citizen universe. So it's not like it's been around for 20 years. It's just recently been
It's an
discovered.
alpha.
Yeah, basically it's an alpha. We know it kind of works. We don't know how it works, but we're sure using it. I mean,
And they had to make that decision because otherwise, a world where people can't die is a world that's fundamentally different to one that can. You might as well introduce like Harry Potter magic. It's going to have huge impacts, and it gives them both. They don't have to rewrite anything too much because it only started being like a widespread thing 2 years ago in the law. Actually, it's only started being widespread now, and it was only first done 2 years ago in the law. And it means that if you think about like how's the military going to restructure around the idea that they can send people to their deaths and get them back with their training intact?
yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
Wow.
they can work on that as it plays out, and they can involve us in the exciting story of how humanity came to change our relationship to death, which is a good thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah.
agree. It gives them a lot of opportunities to expand on lore and even eventually even missions and conflicts and whatever can spawn out of that.
Then we have traumatic response echo, which is what Moss said he's interested in, which is essentially like a reverberation through quantum physics, and I guess there's a whole lot of relativity that we're dealing with here. We're getting into a whole different level of physics with this, but it's an echo. And then let's say your legs are crushed right before you die, that echo of that injury may make you essentially paralyzed, or your legs won't function. So you're going to have to get those taken off and get cybernetics, I assume, in order to be able to use those legs. Then those echoes can transfer from the actual injury. That trauma can affect how successful the imprint is in making you a full entity, being able to be biologically intact with your anatomy and everything. So even scars, like if you're scarred up right before you die. And a point to be made is, I talked about the tiers. The higher quality spheres will produce less echoes than the lower quality spheres.
Yep.
Imprint viability score, IVS, a number that rates the viability of the imprint used in regeneration. So degradation will be a thing. Experience from echoes, imprints will eventually become damaged, that they are no longer viable. The individual will no longer be able to be regenerated, which is essentially the death of a spaceman. Now you got to start completely over, and then one of your kinfolk will have to take over your gameplay.
Yeah, IVS kind of sounds like a second level hit point system, right? So your hit points get down to 0, and then that knocks a bit off that health bar as you respawn, and eventually dead.
Yep.
Done.
That's pretty much how I understood it too.
Yeah.
But obviously, lots of ways that they could, if they want to, write ways for that to be topped back up as or just as a, maybe you don't go for don't die for a while. Maybe it starts to slowly. They could make those decisions for themselves, and they've given themselves enough slack to do so, which I think is good.
And I actually like that idea, because one of the main questions with Death of a Spaceman, and we've discussed this in the past, and it really irritates me, that of course, eventually it's got to happen, because that's the idea that they want to do. But I like your dynamic idea, as opposed to just saying we have a fixed 9 imprints and that's all you get. Now, like you said, what if you last longer, even though you have degradation on the actual current imprint that you're in? Maybe there should be some sort of advantage to not dying and having to be regenerated to where your IVS goes up, to where I may die 18 times today because I'm a PvP player, so my IVS should go down faster than, say, someone that is a PvE player. All he does is he gets in and mines. He never dies. He's never used an imprint, but he died today, whereas the PvP player died 9 times in this one gaming session. As opposed to having a number to it, maybe quality of life and gameplay should matter. I like that, Jale.
I mean, personally, I would have, if I were designing it, the place I'd start, make sure it's fun, would be that it's not just you have 10 lives. It is a continuous scale, and the amount it costs you to die depends on how you died, or whether you had medical treatment before you died, and also the opportunities you have for it to go back up are related to how you play the game. And I think that's where I'd start with things, because ultimately it's just trying to stop people from acting like complete suicidal morons all the day. That's like, oh, I need to get home quickly, I'm just going to shoot myself in the head. Like that's what they want to avoid people doing.
Backspace.
Yeah, the good old Star Citizen teleporter.
I mean, however this system falls, and it won't be perfect, or it might be perfect, or however they explain it with the lore, it's going to be very tricky, and God bless them for trying it. For me, it's all tick, 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 like all very much good stuff. Ultimately, for me, just like the excitement of me jumping in my caterpillar and potentially getting attacked by someone is exciting. Now, on top of that, whether I get an imprint, however many imprints or however the scale works, now it's even more exciting for me to embark on my journey. There's even more of an adrenaline rush, a massive adrenaline rush. Like,
I'm gonna be a bit more paranoid.
Yeah, everyone's going to be at peace. I think no one's going to shoot at each other. Everyone's going to be like risk averse. But yeah, I think it's brilliant. It's so different in a way. There's been permadeath, like I've played No Man's Sky permadeath, and there's been just unlimited respawns. This is somewhere in the middle, and I think it's new and innovative, and can't wait.
If I could just discuss some of the downsides that I don't think are ever going to go away, though, from the lore perspective, from the narrative perspective, I think it has created this situation that's a bit like a Superman film, where in order to make an interesting Superman film or Wolverine film, you've got to find a way for the person to lose their powers, because otherwise there's no peril. And the idea that people now have this different relationship to death means that if you want someone to die in a story, you've got to give a reason of why they've actually died. And it kind of robs us from the ability to, just on the regular, kill the bad guys and save the good guys. And that's not going to go away. And that comes from the top level Chris Roberts decision. And I respect that decision. I just think that is going to be interesting to see how they approach that. It's gonna have impacts on how you write a story. It's gonna have impacts on how you even write just a mission, because wanted dead or alive doesn't really apply anymore. It's all gonna be wanted alive.
Yeah,
kind of.
You just made it dawn on me, man. Like, I think from a gameplay perspective, it's made it exciting from a pure mechanic. But then from a story perspective, I don't like it. I don't like it. Like, like they even alluded to the whole assassination thing. Like, there's no assassinating anyone. You got to keep like stomping on their head 9 times in a row, track them down again, kill them again, kill them again, kill them again. And then that's just one person, right? That's assassination. Imagine a war at a large scale. It just changes everything. It's funny. It's something that the game mechanics are enhanced for me. Like, I'm more nervous now leaving my hab, which is a great thing. But you're right. Actually, the stories get a little bit silly. Unless I'm not a writer. Unless, like Altered Carbon, you can write some magnificent stories, out of it. I don't know. It depends on the talent of the writers.
You can. And the writers know their business, and I'm more than well ready to like give benefit of the doubt and see what they do running with those ideas. I do just think that is it's never going to go away that you can't have those simple, relatable ideas of like go kill this bad guy, save this town from raiders because the stakes have changed and we're going to have to live with that. So
Yeah, that's true.
Yep. So continuing with the vocabulary, we got regen, which essentially term for undergoing the process of regeneration. Going to be a colloquial term for you as an individual, you're a regen, and the process itself. Cycle, which references the period between regenerations. People will ask each other what cycle they're in, acquire how many times they've actually been regenerated. We have gap. The term refers to the length of time between each one being made when someone is regenerated. So the longer the gap, the more memories and experiences will be lost. The frequent imprinting is strongly encouraged, ironically. So you should have
keeping yourself updated.
That's wrong.
Yeah.
What the gap is the time between the last time you updated your imprint to the current time.
Uploaded that information.
Yeah.
Essentially is what it is.
Because
Okay.
the echoes do a bit of updating, and you hope that you have good fidelity, but there's no substitute for going and getting a new scan that's really going to be sure that that's you're at least going to be back to that level.
So now my question is here, because this right here is actually this inquiry into this lure maker's guide. We're dealing with the idea of lure. However, what is going to interest me the most is if the game developers or the game development team actually incorporates something like this, like, oh shit, I got to go by Lureville to the hospital to do my imprint.
I sure hope so.
You sure hope so, or no?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It's just like the
immersion
mechanics. Yeah, I mean, they're there and you don't have to pay attention to them. But if you do, it's a little upgrade on the game.
What they've
go ahead, Jale. No, you go ahead, Jale.
I was going to say, from what they've said, I think everything they're saying now is based on something that the game designers have asked them to accommodate. So it's not that they're writing ideas and the game designers are going to, whether or not they're going to pick them up, but rather the reverse, that they've been asked to accommodate that. But I mean, if you're concerned about like the need to always be going back to Lorville, I think the idea is actually more based on some dialogue they had in the Xenothreat thing. Is you'd be continuously kind of hopping your imprint around. You'd be like, oh, I need to stop at Rest Station 2. I'll just go and update my imprint. So if I die, I'll be back here. And do it that way. Whether we'll be able to update ours remotely, like go into any hospital and update your imprint that's back somewhere else, maybe that could be a thing. But I think it's more in line with that kind of idea of like every time you touch down, you might want to just go and tap the pad and update your imprint.
And I'm looking for, I know Delta doesn't like going down into the cities and all that stuff. And a lot of players don't. A lot of players don't. But, for me, it breaks my heart when I hear people say that, because that's where this game is being built, being able to transition from space into cities, getting out and stuff. So I'm looking forward for actually good, legitimate, strong reasons to get players to land at these locations, whether they like it or not, I suppose, so that there is life.
Hey, man, there ain't shit to do down there except for buy ships, buy clothes, get stuck in elevators, and be frustrated because you're fucking lost.
Yeah.
Just read the signs, dude.
That's why
I think people will be setting their respawns in space on the space stations more than on the city hospitals.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So now we also have the Bioticorp regen serum, an advanced progenitive distillate. Use the base material for cells, tissues, organs so they can be bioprint it for use in regeneration. White, term used to express when someone's IVS is low enough that they can no longer be regenerated. Completely done. IVS is too low, you're at 0 on that. You get now
So what is this serum? Do we like bathe in it before we scan or something?
maybe it's like some of those sci-fi movies when they do clone and the entities in like this gel and their bodies are
It's
rising up and
exactly what I thought of, man.
the
That's exactly the gooey gel for some reason that we have to bathe in or something.
So, as a as a developmental biologist, I deal with the real process. What it sounded like to me was that they were keeping stem cells in this serum. The culture stuff you'd have for like cells would contain serum, and that these stem cells can be like any cell in a body, and indeed can be induced to carry the DNA of any person. So they're sort of shooting your DNA into each of these cells and then telling it, hey, little cell, you're going to be a muscle cell. And then they're putting that in the right place for your body. So it's the kind of gooey biotech side of printing a body, from what I could read into it. But I might be imposing a little bit of my own stuff on that.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I think it's pretty much open to interpretation. To be honest with you, there were a lot of issues that I had with the whole death of a spaceman idea. But if what you said was true, it was more or less the developers for the mechanics asked the narrative team to accommodate what they have done as opposed to vice versa, then this right here could actually be much better in the long run than I originally thought. But with the vocabulary, dead, kill, murder is what it is. Like you're dead, you're killed, you're murdered. And what were you gonna say, Joe?
I was just going to say the reason I say that is because we first heard about all this move away from rescue to cloning as the justification for respawns in October, and then the November December what's it called, the monthly update said now we've gone to talk to the narrative team about writing around that. And they kind of started the lore post with saying they brought this to us. So that's why I think the process has been that way. And also just the thing of, well, is this what you would write if you were starting from scratch and just writing your sci-fi novel? No, it's accommodating gamey things. So that's why I think it's worked that way, from what they have told us.
Sweet. So a little bit of the history. We got Dr. Aka Ibrahim, who essentially wanted to focus in on brain trauma, head injuries, degenerative diseases, etc. And where he took that eventually was in 2932. Dr. Ibrahim was invited by the UE to come study a Vandal. It says captured, but they probably stole it. Biogenetic scanning technology. So gets involved with this and then moves into creating the Ibrahim Sphere, which is the end result of all that research. And as we already went over the Ibrahim Sphere, what they'll be, and then the traumatic response echoes. Then in 2949, the first successful regeneration of a human occurred using rapid bioprinting technology created by Bioticorp, essentially using the serum along with the Ibrahim Sphere. But what we got here is a major game changer. 315 is going to usher in the infancy of this whole entire process, because that's what it's going to be. It's going to be a process. As far as the lure aspect of it, we're going to have to develop there. The mechanics of it as well, that's going to be developed. To be honest with you, after the release of this information, didn't really care for the Star Citizen Live, but to be honest with you, now that we have actually had this discussion in our lore section, very interested in seeing where both the mechanics of the gameplay goes, and the lure itself.
I do like also how they added what's her name, Addison, Imperator Addison, who we all voted for. I don't know, a couple of years ago, whenever.
Speak yourself.
And sorry, yeah, that was very wow. What did I even say that for? The majority of people, voted for
the duly elected Imperator.
yeah. It's great that they involved her in this story because we all went through an exercise of voting, and then we're all like, well, "What was the point of that? Like, what's actually the difference?" But I'm glad that they pulled her into this thread so that at least we can say, "Oh, this is what she's done. She's made this regeneration technology accessible by everyone. She wanted to make it a level playing field and not have a few corporations in control of, this kind of pseudo immortality, even though you're not immortal. You get what I'm saying. So she kind of commoditized the technology so that everyone could use it. And I appreciate that.
And she also justifies the recklessness of it all, of putting unknown alien technology in everyone's lives in every hospital, because she's kind of a little bit of a mad scientist in some respects.
Yeah.
And another connection I think is really interesting in the timeline of this all. You said it was 2946. This scientist comes and starts work on this thing that we captured from the Vandal. 2945 is when Squadron 42 starts, which is a game involving our relationship with the Vandal. So when asked about this in the Star Citizen Live about whether the Vandal go for another alien, Dave went, "Oh, maybe you'll find out one day." Oh, he was very coy about it. So I think they might have slipped it into the overarching plot of Squadron 42 that we may involve ourselves in the initial capture of that technology, maybe even just as an Easter egg, but it appears like they're actually going to be part of like the whole timeline.
That would be so great, man.
It would be cool. Yeah, I'd really hope they do that.